All right, you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, welcome everybody. And thank you for joining our coffee break today, boosting your nonprofit's FP&A capabilities. My name is Tracy Thompson, and I'll be your facilitator today on our webinar. Before we get started, I have a few tips on using the Zoom platform so you can engage with the presenters and have the best experience possible. You should see the following icons on your Zoom toolbar: ask a question, chat, and raise your hand. You can use the ask a question or chat to submit any questions at any time. If you need any assistance, click the raise the hand and I'll connect with you as soon as I can. We do encourage you to ask questions throughout the entire presentation, and we'll address the questions toward the end or during the presentation. If you experience audio issues, you can access your audio settings and test your audio when you're already in the meeting. At the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom meeting toolbar, you'll find either the headphones or the microphone logo to join audio or mute, unmute. Click Join Audio to choose to connect your computer audio or dial into the meeting with a phone. Once your audio is connected, go ahead and click Mute to disable audio or Unmute to enable. I do want to remind you, we will be sending out the recording and presentation within 72 hours. So you'll have a link to download the slides and share if you'd like. All right, so for today's agenda, we have learning objectives and introductions, nonprofit industry trends, typical nonprofit KPIs, utilizing an FP&A solution, and closing questions. So our learning objectives today are: evaluate the impact of nonprofit market trends on budgeting and planning, understand how to integrate P&L and cash flow planning to ensure accurate cash projections, explore how an FP&A solution could be used to enhance your reporting and dashboards. And with that, I'd like to welcome today's awesome presenters, Brenda Kaler and Gabe Macy's. Brenda, Gabe, do you want to give a short intro?
Hi, my name is Brenda Kaler. I'm the Director of Industry Strategy here at Armanino. I've been here about 7 years. Prior to that, I was a client. I've been working with nonprofit organizations for about 25 years.
Awesome. And I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabe Macy's. I'm one of our FP&A solutions managers here at Armanino within our consulting practice, and currently residing in Columbus, Ohio. I spent my first half of my career in public accounting at Ernst & Young within their audit practice, and one of my focuses in clients being nonprofit. I then jumped ship over to the consulting world here at Armanino within our FP&A technology consulting group, and now I focus on Workday Adaptive Planning and have been using it for over 3 years.
Awesome, thank you both. So with that, we're going to just jump right into polling question number 1. Kick things off here. All right, polling 1. What is your organization using for FP&A today? Excel, Workday Adaptive Planning, Blackbaud, Sage Intact Planning, other. And if you want to go ahead and write it in chat if you feel.
Oh, wow, we got a lot of different ones. Martis and Profix, definitely see those a lot as well. Good to get an idea of everything that folks on the call are using today.
Yep, and here's the results.
No surprises there. Excel is always the winner. Thank you guys. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump right in. So these are the top trends that I'm seeing with all of our nonprofit clients and across the industry as a whole. Obviously, the biggest one is staffing difficulties. I was thinking when I was in industry, I don't know that I ever had a full accounting staff. And that was a while ago. And so I think now it's even harder to have a full staff today. There's a demographic drought. We've got about, I think I saw a statistic the other day that said something like 70% of CPA holders are baby boomers. So there's actually just not enough accountants. We've got a lot of accountants set to retire. Not a lot of people taking their place. We haven't done a very good job making accounting the sexy career that it has always been, right? So when you're competing for talent, every organization needs, accounting and FP&A staff. And we're competing with Fortune 500 companies and tech companies and other companies that may have a better package. And so we've always talked about, in the sector, about the nonprofit haircut that people have to take in terms of pay and equitable compensation. The newer staff, the 24 to 28-year-olds, coming into the workforce now, aren't as willing to do that. And so how are we adjusting? If we can't hire people, how are we getting the work done without the people? And without burning out and burning up the people that are left behind? How can we talk about automation? How can we talk about technology? How can we talk about outsourcing to be able to still accomplish the keeping the lights on and the reporting that needs to happen if we don't have the staff? And so definitely something we're seeing, an increase overall in the market is people asking about those kinds of solutions. How are we going to see those in the market today? So one of the other things, of course, that we're seeing is increasing size and frequency of donations. This is something that all nonprofits are working on and working towards. And so how are we looking at the organization to be able to dig in a little bit more? How are we segmenting donors? How are we focusing on additional revenue streams? Are we modeling out different things that we're going to try out? I know during COVID, almost every nonprofit was trying something a little different, had to pivot the way programs were delivered, the way that we operated internally. And so I see that continuing as people are coming back to a hybrid, as they're staying remote, as we have a looming recession. How are we staying relevant? How are we reaching the people we need to reach? And how are we getting the funds in the door to be able to do that? The third one we're seeing is environmental, social, and governance initiatives. Nothing new to our nonprofit industry, but a lot of increased talk about these kinds of initiatives in the broader community of companies as the SEC gets ready to require these for public companies going forward. So thinking about a nonprofit, what do we want to do very often is impact reporting. It's not so much on what money we took in and how we spent it, but what was the difference that we made in the community? How have we been able to track that? And to report on it out to folks. And so there are ways within Adaptive to pull in external and third-party data, to pull in maybe your impact metrics so that we could do an ROI analysis. So that's really exciting as well, is that within FP&A systems, they're moving more towards a data warehouse. Kind of my last point on there, I'll skip ahead a little bit. So the data warehouse can bring in not just information from your ERP, your debits and credits, but that impact data. Or if you're bringing in operational data, you want something from your CRM system to be in there, or you've got some metrics on the types of things that you're building or the people that you're serving, and want to be able to show KPIs that include both operational and statistical data, as well as financial data. The other thing we're looking at, if for folks on the call that may not be aware, we have an artificial intelligence lab. We're working with clients to build a proprietary version of ChatGPT. If anybody has, been working with it or played around with it, you realize it's trained on the internet. That is a wide swath of data. You can't be an expert on the internet because there's so much bad data out there. But if you trained it internally, we trained one here at Armanino on our HR policies. So it's a chat bot that you can chat with and find out what days we have off for vacation. And so thinking about internally how a nonprofit, if you could create your own LLM out of all of the data you have as a nonprofit, how powerful would that be? And what could you bring it into in terms of financial modeling, forecasting, being able to really see those trends in your business? And then the last one, of course, is harnessing technology through automation and digital workers. Again, going back to that demographic drought, if you can't hire a person and the work needs to get done and there are only so many hours in a day and so much you can do, how can you do more with less? How can you automate those repetitive, time-consuming tasks, those 25 tab spreadsheets? How can we think about, is there a way to have basically a macro that is not within Excel, that is able to pull data down from a website, put it into Excel, format it, provide some insights and analysis, and then send it for review. To that extent, if you just had to review versus prepare that, how much time could that save you and how many processes could that replace? And so having a lot of conversations these days with clients about how can we automate those routine things so that for the staff that we do hire, we can pay them more, it's more rewarding and fulfilling work, and they're not getting burnt out by all of the minutia that happens when your accounting and FP&A team is working around systems that were designed by other people, and their systems aren't designed to handle where your organization is today. Next slide, Tracy. So just wanted to talk about some common KPIs that we see clients using both in Adaptive as well as in their ERP board reporting. So all of these are calculated based on a combination of financial input. In some cases, they may have other inputs, cost per worker, for example, under the profitability heading. You've got to have your headcount, your staffing headcount, which in data models for headcount and staffing you would have. Current ratio, debt ratio, how is, making sure your organization's not over leveraged. Or in our case, sometimes we're looking at those only on unrestricted net assets because we may not be over leveraged in total, but too much may be restricted. And it's hampering our ability to actually manage the business as we would like. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gabe.
Thanks, Brenda. All right, so let's talk Workday's adaptive planning, as Brenda was alluding to. Before we get into the software live and show you some of the cool functionality, I want to give a quick background. So Armanino is one of the top partners with Workday to implement their budgeting and reporting cloud solution called adaptive planning. So a solution of choice for many nonprofits. Since this is a cloud-based solution, you can access the login page anywhere in the world, essentially, because as one of the leading solutions in the FP&A space, the solution was developed for finance professionals, which means there's no coding and scripting involved to maintain the tool for an everyday user, right? Us finance professionals can easily maintain and update our data with little to no involvement with an IT professional. So the tool is also meant to be your one-stop shop to all of your budgeting and forecasting and reporting needs. So the solution gives finance teams more flexibility and more time to analyze the data instead of actually building out models, inputting data, compiling or distributing everyone's budgets and reports, which can be very time consuming. So today we'll look under the hood in adaptive planning and give you a taste of what might help your organization with some of the points that Brenda was mentioning earlier, including like planning headcount related costs and revenue, while also showing some of the reporting and dashboard capabilities in adaptive. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. So in adaptive, so this is we'll call like our personnel planning sheet here. So you can see at first glance, it looks similar to like what an employee roster would look like, which this technically is. Before we get into the data inputs here, a few admin items of this sheet. So in adaptive, they have something called the level structure. So this is going to be, right now we're at a consolidated view, but your level structure can be your department structure, your cost centers, your locations, really how budget owners see the data. And then your versions is going to be, your different iterations of your budget or your forecasts, right? Maybe your reforecast is going to be a separate version. Maybe you have what if scenarios, which we'll see here in a second, where you can actually build out as many versions as you want, right? And then compare them in a report. Okay. So we get back to this data here. So you can see these columns of benefits, start date, right? Pay rate. So we're planning by individual head, right? And these can be customized to meet your needs, right? But we want things that are going to help drive calculations that we want to report on. We don't need zip code and address and those things, right? We want, what's the benefit selection? It's going to drive a benefit calculation. Pay rate is going to drive the salary calculation. Start date's going to drive when those calculations actually hit, your P&L, right? So those are the things that we want to see when we're looking at planning in adaptive for your personnel or headcount costs. You can also integrate this data from your payroll system. So we have many customers who will automatically have that integration, and it'll refresh automatically whenever you want it to, right? But we also have users who you can have easy to use Excel files that can upload into adaptive itself that are pretty seamless if you don't go the integration route. So in terms of data, so what does this mean in terms of where are the calculations, right? So if I right click here on Susie Johnson, who's the CEO, it's going to pop open a background screen here. And this is actually where the calculations are going to live, right? So if I'm starting in January, the total, it'll calculate, in this case, salary, Susie Johnson's monthly salary expense, right? Personnel. There's probably some assumptions in the background about the benefit selections and calculating that monthly expense, which is then going to feed, right, your financial statements. So the main thing here is if you add new employees, update, remove employees here, right, that's all going to be done. Those calculations don't need to be updated. It's going to be automatically calculated and it's going to be hitting those financial statements instantaneously. The last point here is you can see here, if we look at Carl Bryant, so Carl Bryant actually has splits or allocations in his for his costs. So you can actually easily allocate costs of individual employees, in this case, across different programs, right? So 25% of his salaries or benefits are going to go to program Z, right? 5% is going to go to program D. So you can do those type of things in this planning and be in a very organized process. Okay. So what I'm going to do next, I'm actually going to go to Carl's department, right? So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say Department 1. Okay, so this is a way if you have a bunch of budget owners who owns different departments or locations or cost centers, Adaptive has many layers of security and data restrictions where I can have a user just see data at this one department. I only own Department 1. I'm only going to be able to manage my data within Department 1. Or you could essentially say, I don't want anyone to see any personnel data. It's sensitive data. You can restrict people from seeing it altogether. But in this view, so you can see, we were talking about Carl on our last screen there, and you can see that here are his details. And you can see the allocations across the programs. You can also plan new hires in this sheet, right? So it's all a one-stop shop, right? You can have new hires, to be hired individuals, and be able to input them into this planning model pretty seamlessly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you if a scenario, if I do add a new hire, maybe a future hire, how that's going to look. Okay, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open the dashboards. And the dashboards is really, it's your graphical representations, and we'll show you here in a second, but you can share dashboards, you can have your own dashboards, right? So I'm going to go in here to this active budget analysis dashboard. Okay, so you can see there's a couple of different tabs here, right? You can set these up and customize them however you want them, right? But this is going to give us users an idea of what are our budget due dates, right? And then we're going to have a couple tabs in here that are going to show graphical representations of what you're working in. So in this case, if we actually change our version, so remember we're working out of our annual budget, I'm going to say, maybe I want to do a what if analysis of if I add a new hire, what does that look like to my overall financial statements, right? So I'm going to click here to budget what if. Okay. I'm also going to open up a report. It's going to be our financial statement report. So you can see here on this report, we have your summary of your statement activities, financial position, balance sheet, cash flow, and some metrics. So right now we're doing a comparison between our budget, annual budget, and budget what if. Now there's no variance because these two versions are the exact same right now. The data is the same, they're just a copy of one of the other. So there's no variance because there's no changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my personnel model, and I created this new budget what if version. And what if I did add a new hire to this headcount model, right? So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to just copy this row. Okay, I'm going to maybe call it new hire 5. And then we're going to keep some of this other information. And let's say the start date will be 12/11/2023. And just so we can see the changes, let's just say $200,000. I didn't save it yet, so there's going to be no changes that you're going to see. If I click back to the dashboards and we look in December at this 55.7, we would expect this to grow, right? Because that employee is starting in December, right? And we would expect all these metrics to change when I go and save that file. And we would also expect this report to show some variance because now we've updated a new person in this version. It should affect our financials, right? So I'm going to go back here and hit save. Okay. So I've now included this new hire to be hired in December 2023. Now, if I go back to my reports and I refresh this data, there's now variances, right? So part of showing this is how the speed of which you can make these changes and how much it affects, your downstream reporting, right? So not only is it, we can see that it affects, what we would think our salaries, our taxes, all of our headcount related costs, but we're also affecting our balance sheet, right? And we're also affecting our cash position, right? We're also affecting our metrics, right? So like one small change like that is a very quick way using adaptive for reporting and visualizations to show those changes without having to, over engineer anything in Excel, right? You're seeing the results live within seconds. Okay, so similar to my dashboards, if I, if I refresh my dashboards here, so let me out here. So that 68.9, it was 55.7, I think, and now it's 68.9, right? It's showing the changes, the effect of just that one little change we made from updating a new hire. Now you can compare the two versions. Okay. A lot of softwares there's lag time, or you have to wait overnight for those changes to be in effect, but in adaptive, it happens instantaneously. Okay. So that's a little brief overview of the headcount model. I also want to show you, if I go to maybe a little bit about revenue planning, it's going to have a similar feel of that personnel model, right? But now we're looking at data from, and let's sort this. So you can actually sort columns. You can do all kind of other stuff. And if you're interested in learning more, we can talk through those things. But now I can plan by different grant types or gifts or whatever I need to add to these rows. It's really easier for users to input this data entry. So I'm not time spans at 2019. I don't want this data. I can actually change the time span. I'm going to say I don't want quarters. I only want to see 2023. Hit OK. Okay. Well, maybe I know that this particular line here, I know it's going to be potentially, let's say it's going to be $1,200 for the year. Well, it's actually going to give me an option to break back this amount in different ways. So I can break it back evenly, proportionately. I can weigh it 4, 4, 5 over the months, right? But in this case, I'm going to do proportionally, and it's going to automatically spread that data over into the time span. Or I could do a simple $200 here for this line. I could copy it forward, right? Copy to the end. I can copy and paste, right? So you can still do all these functionality that you would like to see in a tool like this, and be able to do that pretty easily. So the last point here is we go back to our dashboarding, and I hop over to my funding, gifts, grants dashboard. So you can actually interact with these dashboards and get drilled down into data deeper deeper than just what you're seeing on the surface, right? So if I have this funding sources fiscal year pie chart here, well, I see that there's government grants, corporate grants, and foundation grants, sorry, at this department one level. Well, if I go click into the foundation grants in my dashboards, I can say, let me see what this breakdown is by donor, okay? Well, then it's going to give you a breakdown of what donors make up that number there, right? And you can keep drilling down and drilling down. It all depends on how much data you obviously have and what your modeling looks like. But it's a quick way to get answers that someone might ask you without having to go back and dig through files and stuff like that. You can just dig through those dashboards there and get quick answers. You can also add this, you can make this a presentation mode. So, you know, if you're stressed for time, you don't need to put it in PowerPoint, you can put it in presentation mode and you can present it to your team just using this mode here. Okay. One other thing I wanted to show is just some more examples of dashboards. And one really good use case is, let's say you have C-suite individuals who want to analyze data. We have this dashboard called CFO. Well, you can actually have this screen here be the first page that the CFO opens up when they log in, right? You don't want them looking through all the modeling backgrounds stuff. You want them to see the numbers clear right in front of them when they open up Adaptive and be able to analyze easily once they do. So you can make this the first page they see upon login, which is really cool. Okay.
Hey, Gabe, I got a quick question for you from the chat. Are these models all built native in this dashboard, or did we build these, or are these like come out of the box in Adaptive?
Yeah, so Adaptive, the beauty of it, it's all customizable. So there are certain models, like the personnel model does come pre-built with some of the functionality, but typically clients, want to customize it to their needs. But that's the beauty, is we can customize it however you want it. And there's so many different ways to dissect these things and build them. And typically it's never the same thing for every customer.
Yeah, I had another one in the chat kind of saying about the personnel model. That was a very robust and nice personnel model. And that the one that comes, natively is not that model, right? That's been enhanced and customized, for this demo or for a particular client, so that there is like a basic framework, like every company has to do personnel modeling, but it will depend on what does your organization look like, right? And what are your KPIs, what are your metrics, what are all the other things that you need to take into account?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So there's a framework for personnel or fixed assets or those type of things. But it depends on, maybe you're doing your salary calculation over 12 months instead of doing it, by days and by weeks. Some people want to calculate their salary by weeks, right? Your payroll periods, right? There's things like that we often customize to meet what your needs are.
And then the other question I got was on pricing. It was an anonymous question, so unfortunately we can't get back to you. In order to give pricing, we would need to scope it because there are so many different factors. Depends on how many models you want to build in, how many licenses you need. If it's just one person building the budget, you might need something less robust versus if you have, 45 collaborators, from all over the country. So I think that is helpful as well.
Yeah, and the big thing there too, Brenda, is so Adaptive is great because you can start small and then scale later on, right? You don't need to, what I'm showing you are the possible, right? But like, that doesn't mean you have to build all of this out right away, right? It can be a walk, jog, run, sprint approach, right? That we can take it, or however you think you want to take it, we'll work with you in that way.
And we definitely have clients that start and the only thing they do is the personnel planning, because that's 75% of the nonprofit's budget generally is salaries and planning for that onboarding. And then one more question from the chat, Gabe. This cannot be self-implemented, right? You do have to have an implementation partner, either us or another organization. That's correct.
Exactly. Yeah. So typically, you would need a partner to help implement this.
And then the last question was on Workday versus Adaptive. Adaptive is one product that Workday sells, and so if you have a Workday account, it might be for any number of the products that they have. You would need to purchase the Adaptive product to be able to do that. And I think we had one last polling question.
Yes, if we can get it in, we'll get you guys out of here. Thanks for joining us. This is a great presentation, so really appreciate everyone online. So here's a second polling question for you, those of you still on. Are you considering changing your FP&A system in the future? Yes, within the next 18 months, maybe a few years. You're happy with what you got. Not sure, you're weighing out the options, or no, not for you. I'll give it a few seconds here since we are over time. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we got a pretty good even amount of results there. So
yeah.
Thanks everyone. Really appreciate the you can't see the polling question? I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Appreciate everyone being on, Brenda and Gabe. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. We will be sending our email here, or feel free to email Brenda and Gabe as well. All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.